Hello, everybody. Welcome to a Zoom meeting with myself, Simon, today, and we're going to be talking about the Cardinal Cross. I'm pretty excited to be sharing this knowledge with you today. I have a lot of interest in learning about the different combinations that the natural zodiac can offer. For instance, like in today's conversation, we're going to be looking at the cardinal signs of Aries and Cancer and Libra and Capricorn, and how they will interact with each other. So I want to give a little bit of background on why I felt inspired to actually do this. And one of them was that I noticed let me start with this firstly. When we're looking at astrology in today's realm, in today's world, what I've noticed is a lot of people are beginning to recognize that there is an inner relationship to their self that exists separate from the material world. Okay. And astrology up until now has very much supported a discovery of this inner world, but on the surface, and it had a lot to do with predicting the future. So, or trying to understand events, but primarily to help remove the fear and the anxiety of the mind. And what my work is based on and I think that there are a lot of astrologers out there that are doing the same thing, is how do we begin to use astrology as a tool and as an opportunity to access this inner realm of self-awareness. So it becomes a doorway. And the doorway allows us to discover a deeper part of this personality that we experience on this plane of existence. And so my inspiration with today's teaching, and also the context I would like to create, the boundary I'd like to create for everybody that's listening to this video today and also going forward, is that it is my personal belief, as well as, again, shared amongst a lot of people, that as we move further into this human timeline that is our existence, we're going to be more conscious of the fact that there is a inner identity that exists, a metaphysical reality, a multidimensional self that is also exploring and experiencing itself. And so the astrology chart, at least from evolutionary astrology's perspectives, helps us access, become aware of, and to a certain degree, help us process the intensity of what that could mean for us. So with that being said, this boundary is, or the value that you would get out of today's conversation and the inspiration that leads me to do this, is we're developing an ego identity. And this ego identity, which we have many names, we have our different names. My name is Simon. I use this online name called Raising Vibrations. It's a container. And this ego form is a very important and integral part of how you could use this astrology as a gateway to understanding this deeper self, to make contact with this deeper self. It's like a bridge. So when we look at astrology and the way that these astrological symbols have been shaped by your experience in life, we actually begin to open up this potential for this developing self and how the ego can meet that halfway. Simply meaning that if we looked at the astrology chart and understood each symbol as a memory that we have experienced and has been formed within us, and we measure its development, each archetype, each planet, we measure its development, we then hold the potential to access deeper layers of understanding. And from my point of view, one of the greatest tools and the greatest gifts that you can access with astrology is awareness, not through the need to soothe anxiety or fear of the mind of the future, but simply to really help process and digest deeper emotional complexes that are a part of what it means to be human. Okay. And of course, the bottom line of it is self-awareness. The bottom line of it is the capacity to recognize oneself as it interacts, as this self, as this personality, as this higher sense of identity is interacting. And you could almost say that there is a opportunity here to use the ego, which is your most conscious sense of self, the Saturn realm, and the let's call it the higher self, not in the context of something that's higher, just something that's existing outside this realm, that they're trying to meet with each other, as I said. And we want to create a bond. We want to understand that bond. We want to let those experiences form so that we can see a deeper side of ourselves. So the cardinal cross is a opportunity to access this, I think. Okay, so let me do that. Okay. Fantastic. So just to kind of outline this for us today, it's an EA Zoom meeting around the 9th of August, and the topic is the cardinal cross. And I'd just like to let everybody know that you can find my work and you can find my work and what I do, if you're watching this video after the fact, on a platform called Patreon. And if you simply just type in Raising Vibrations and Patreon at the same time, you can actually find this little community that I've begun to create with the intention to support anybody that's trying to understand what this experience is for us at the moment, astrology and so on and so forth. Okay. So let's begin with looking at what is the cardinal cross. Okay. So the cardinal signs are connected, right? Cardinal signs are connected by a 90-degree square. Okay. So a 90-degree square is how cardinal signs are connected. And also through 180-degree opposition. Okay. So we have two angles, one of them being 90 degrees and then an exact 180-degree opposition. So two signs in opposition to each other. Okay. So that's the language that we would use in today's conversation. And of course, it is comprised of 4 signs, 4 archetypes, okay, which are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So the Aries archetype is the energy of initiation, okay? If you look very closely at the glyph, you can see that there is a stream of awareness that is moving straight out, that is unified. You can even see that as Pisces. It's unified, it's not separate. And then at some point, it reaches a point of initiation. And in that point of initiation, it sprouts out into different directions. And I think it's really important to ground the understanding of Aries as the word initiation of a new direction, and how that initiation leads to different directions. That is about exploration, right? Exploration. And when you go deeper into understanding what the natural zodiac is about, which of course we'll share with you today, you'll see that the word exploration is actually linked with Sagittarius, which is a fire sign. And so you have a trine between Aries and Sagittarius. And this trine supports the way that these two archetypes interact with each other. So new direction, initiation of a new direction leads to exploration. Exploration leads to direct experience, Sagittarius. Okay. So for Aries, this is a new beginning, a new start, a new burst of life. And it's really important to understand this because Aries is part of a cardinal sign. So the cardinal sign represents initiation of change. And of course, there are 4 signs that are linked with the cardinal symbols. So each of these signs are changing in motion. There are part of initiation of change. And it all begins with Aries. It all starts with Aries. One thing to note about Aries is that it doesn't have a defined sense of self, in my opinion. It is deeply, deeply instinctive, and awareness develops through Aries only once there is a relationship formed to the experience that was initiated in Aries, which of course I'll get deeper into with the natural zodiac. So this is just initiation. Now, when I talked about the two angles that are formed with cardinal energy, of course, between Aries and Cancer, there is a 90-degree angle that gets formed. And because there are 2 signs, Gemini and Taurus, in between Cancer and Aries in the natural zodiac, which again we'll see, which are 30 degrees. Each sign is 30 degrees. So it's Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and then Cancer begins at 90 degrees. So we have Cancer over here. And as you can see with the symbolism again, it's very beautiful. It represents something that is needing to be secure, right? There are many different words that can be used to understand a Cancer, but in an evolutionary impulse, just as Aries is initiate, Cancer reflects this necessity for securing something. That's why like I said, when you see the glyph, you can see that there is I can't actually use your hands, but it's like 2 hands that are linking up together, that are creating something that is secure, which is why in our books of astrology and description of astrology, you always see at least one point, the home. Cancer represents the home. Because for most of us, living in our home represents the womb. It's a physical manifestation of the womb. And within the womb, the baby is secure and safe. So we feel at home in our security. Okay. Now, Cancer as an archetype, because of its impulse to create security, will naturally, through the human condition, form what is called an identity, i.e., an ego identity, a self-image. So evolutionary astrology teaches that Cancer, the 4th house, and the moon are all the archetypes that reflect the ego identity, simply because when we take a string of events and we link them together, and we see that each moment is a reflection, water sign, Cancer, a reflection of an experience in that moment, and we string those moment to moment to moment to moment realities together, what we get is a series of emotional imprinting that we can identify with, that represents over time an identity, as I talked about, right? We identify with it, so it becomes an identity. It's patterns. And we feel secure in this pattern identification. That's why it can be so difficult for Moon and Uranus people, or say, for instance, Uranus in the 4th house, as an example. These type of symbols can be difficult because the very nature of what represents security is under consistent change. And you'll actually notice in the natural zodiac, which we won't be doing today, but there is a natural inconjunct, in other words, an angle that represents something that we can't see, between Aquarius and Cancer. And Aquarius doesn't have a consistent pattern, whereas Cancer seeks that consistent pattern. So when we identify irregular patterns, it makes us feel insecure, at least the mind. Okay, so Cancer, a cardinal sign again, it's also part of a change. And then we go over to Libra, and Libra represents the relatability that is formed in Cancer and Aries. So you can see that there's a thread that is occurring here. Aries initiates, that leads to some form of emotional identification, Cancer, that then in Libra we can begin to relate to. So there's two sides of the experience. It's our emotional experience, and it's the object we are relating to, or it's the person that we're relating to. So relatability. It is also Cancer Libra, where we understand our self through the other. We begin to understand ourself, or we begin to understand, we begin to understand ourself through the other. And again, it doesn't have to be just a partner. It can be through friends. It can be through any form of relationship, to the dog, animal, etc. Okay. So relatability, right? Reflection. When we look at Libra, this is an air sign. So we have Aries as fire, Cancer as water, Libra as air. Libra is also the dynamic of social. So it's through the archetype of social do we understand our relationship to other people as well. So just pause for a second over here. Somebody's mic. Thanks. Okay. So when the energy now moves, just to clarify over here, between Aries and Libra, we have a 180-degree angle. Okay. So it's 180 degrees in opposition to each other. And now we get Capricorn, right? So between Libra and Cancer, there is a 90-degree square. And between Libra and Capricorn, we have another 90-degree square. So we go 90 degrees. And Capricorn is the archetype of definition. It's where something is defined. It's where a boundary is created in order for us to interact with. It's very, very profound when you get deep into the archetype of Capricorn and you start seeing it as the framework of something. And in its beautiful opposition to Cancer, you can see that something, in order for something to be observed, it must have a framework. Otherwise, it has no context. It's very difficult for us to emotionally connect with something when there's no context, which is why when you have somebody that has Saturn in Pisces, as an example, or Saturn conjunct Neptune, or Saturn square Neptune, any Pisces energy that's interacting with Capricorn can show up potentially as somebody that struggles to know where the line between this and that starts and ends, or how do I find meaning in something if everything is seemingly so liquid or unified. So Capricorn is the point in this cardinal journey in which, when we initiated through Aries and we got a self-identity in Cancer, that we now became, that we could relate to Libra, it becomes definition for us in Capricorn. We're able to crystallize it. We're able to form it and say, okay, this is this. So this cardinal axis is very profound and very influential when it comes to human relatability. And for most of us that are on the planet that go through an experience of identifying with some direction in life, that we first need to recognize what we are emotionally inside of ourselves so that we can form a relationship to what we see as the potential direction. So the potential direction is Capricorn. Libra is how we relate to that, and Cancer is the self-identity. And Aries shows up and says, how do I initiate that? How do I action that? Okay. So here's the evolutionary axis. This is how initiation of change begins. Okay. So when we look, it all begins with this beautiful little inconjunct between Scorpio and Aries. I'm just going to pause here for a second in terms of the cardinal axis and just reflect to those of you that are learning this for the first time, or that are in a place that wants to understand, what do you mean when you say natural zodiac? Well, this is the natural zodiac. Okay. As you can see, there are 12 pie pieces, and they are reflected through the synthesis with the archetypes. So the first house is Aries, and the fourth house will be Cancer, and the seventh house will be Libra, and the 10th house will be Capricorn. Okay. And that's the cardinal cross. Can everybody see here that there is a 90-degree angle that goes all the way from Capricorn all the way to Aries? 90-degree angle all the way from Aries to Cancer. And those are the squares. So Capricorn squares Aries. Aries squares Cancer. Cancer squares Libra. Okay? And Libra squares Capricorn. And then you can see here, Capricorn is 180 degrees in opposition. Okay? And Aries is in opposition to Libra. That is the cardinal cross. Okay? Cardinal signs there. And then the opposition, the 180 degrees, and the 90-degree angles. Okay. So getting back to the evolutionary axis, it is held within the archetype of Scorpion. I don't want to go too deep into this because it's not about this, but it's held in the Scorpio archetype that everything is merged and osmosed with. In other words, everything is together. It's not unified, but it's merged with something. It's attached to something. And initiation of change means, in our psychology and in life, that something must separate itself from what it is merged in order to experience and initiate a new cycle of self-identity. Okay? So in order to explore and understand something in a new way, there must be an impulse of separation from something that is known. This is the fundamental teaching that is held within Pluto and is held within the nature of the soul's desires. This 8th house, 1st house dynamic. Evolution. Okay, so when the energetic impulse of Aries is felt and the separation from Scorpio, from whatever we are merged with, initiates, then what happens is we experience the first square, the first tension aspect between Aries and Cancer. Okay. So when we lead into a new direction, immediately we are felt with an insecurity. We're felt with an uncertainty. Like when we start, say for instance, a job for the first time, we've never been there before. The anxiety of experiencing your first EA Zoom meeting talk, the anxiety of doing a speech for the first time, the anxiety of riding a bike for the first time. Everything that is about the first time is held, that experience of feeling insecure is held within the relationship between Aries and Cancer. Because remember, when we go back to the definitions of these archetypes, we know that Aries represents initiation, new beginning, and Cancer represents I must secure it. So if there's no security held in the new direction, we are in vulnerability. We can't emotionally connect with it because it hasn't been developed within our brain. The psychology and the limbic system and the neuroplasticity is not developed. So once this evolutionary axis has been initiated by Aries and we separate from something that is secure and we lead into a new direction, we immediately form a relationship to something new, Libra. We begin to relate to this new experience. And so the tension that is held between the 4th and the 7th says, I am now developing an emotional connection to something new. What type of feedback is that giving me? Okay. Once we have formed a new relationship to something that's new, we begin to then see through time, even though I talked about Capricorn being something about definition, time is definition. Because we're able to define this moment right now relative to the clocks that we use, relative to the watches that we use. So Capricorn defines the cycle of time. It defines the direction we're going in. And we're able to relate to it. We're able to identify with it. Oh, this is where I'm going. This is who I am. This is what it is. So this is the evolutionary axis that is initiated when we do something new. It's how we form a relationship to it, how we form an emotional bond to something. And just think about this for a moment. In April 2014, Saturn was in Scorpio. We had Jupiter in Cancer, we had Uranus in Aries, and we had Mars in Libra, which formed this infamous, maybe it was in March. Maybe it was in March. I can't remember exactly. April, March. We had this cardinal cross that was taking place for us. And it was such a huge event in the astrology world, and sort of expressed outwardly as like this change was occurring. And Pluto was in Capricorn, by the way, sorry. And you can see that Uranus was making at that time an inconjunct to Saturn. And of course, Uranus was squaring Jupiter in Cancer, that was squaring Mars in Libra, and Mars was squaring Pluto in Capricorn. And this is the archetype in which, on that moment, we begin to see the impulse of change occur. And it is reverberating within our consciousness today. Just think about the nature of how we have changed as a collective race at a psychological and emotional level, and our identity has changed. No longer do we send faxes anymore. No longer do we see the purpose in certain things anymore. To the point where we are leading ourselves into a completely new way of being. So this moment that took place then was actually very profound, and this was the symbolism that was actually taking place. It was right there. Okay. So let's look at some other aspects over here. And again, I want to just recapture the essence of this teaching and the sharing. What I want to add and contribute to the overall development of your awareness when you're looking at an astrology chart is, how can you see how the ego and your sense of self has developed and is developing relative to the way that your astrology chart is defined. In other words, I can have Uranus square Mars in my chart, and I can look at that and say, oh, my future is going to be unpredictable in my actions. And that's true to a certain degree, that those dynamics are there. But where the real potential lies is, what is the memory that is held within the experiences with Uranus conjunct with Uranus square Mars? For instance, what does it mean to experience a life where that Mars energy seems to pop up in radical ways that sometimes appears very inconsistent? What does that feel like at an ego level? What type of trauma is associated with it? How does it feel working with the adrenals, as an example? These are the types of things that can really, really help you as an astrologer, or help you just curious about learning astrology, open up your inner reality to your personal experience and connect you with something deeper, which is really what the cardinal cross is about also. Okay. So Aries is initiation, Cancer, secure, Libra, relate, Capricorn, define it through the cycle, right? When we recall a memory, we are able to recall it because it's an experience, Cancer, that we relate to, Libra, that through time we were able to define, Capricorn, relative to an experience that we initiated, Aries. It's also how we actually relate to another person. So here's how this works in the psychology of the human experience, right? You can see here, and I wonder if I'm just going to see if no, okay. So you can see here with Aries is always going, it's a yang energy. So Aries is always initiating something in a completely new direction. Cancer is a yin energy, and this square reflects to us this feeling of, I want to go inward to explore something. I want to go inward and stay there. And Aries wants to pull me out. It wants to pull me out. So the classic example that Jeffrey Wolf Green used to use in his descriptions was the baby that was being birthed from the womb, the initiation into the new world, Aries, as it meets each moment. So it's really interesting to observe what signs you have ruling your first house and what sign you have ruling your fourth house. because that tension between those two signs will tell you where, on some level, your ego has this tension between feeling safe and wanting to initiate something new. Remember that, like, as an example, I'll just use my example. I have Aquarius rising, and ruling my fourth house cusp is Aries, actually, at 25 degrees. So I have this very interesting dynamic where Aries rules my fourth house cusp. And that shows up as a natural tension between the feeling of wanting to feel free, Aries, yet needing emotional security, Cancer. Now, with Aquarius ruling my first house, this tension between Aquarius and Aries in myself, how it shows up, is very interesting because, again, I shared with you that I had Uranus square Mars. So I have Uranus, the planet Uranus, squaring my Mars in my chart. And then I have Aquarius on the rising. So another repeating theme here of Mars and Aquarius. And I also have Aquarius squaring the Mars on the fourth, on Aries in the fourth house. So I hope I haven't confused anybody. I have Aries here, and I have Aquarius there, and I have Uranus squaring Mars over there. Okay. So Uranus and Mars is the same archetype as Aquarius and Aries. And you can see this repeating theme in my chart here, where it's Aquarius, rising sign, squaring the fourth house cusp, which is Aries. And I can read into my chart just very, very, very subtly, just by looking at those, just by looking at the square between Aries and Mars, Aries, Mars and Aquarius, Uranus. I can see that there is initiation, a change in direction, a change in ego identity that is occurring here. And I can look at my life and I can see that, yes, this is true. I have gone through experiences in which my soul is clearly wanting to initiate a new cycle regarding how it relates to itself. What I find really fascinating and valuable in that experience is that we're not taking such complex astrology, but really actually simplifying it to the point where we can be so clear about something so very profound within our lives. What does it mean to live a life where the astrology chart, just through that symbolism, is saying to you that here is where your, like, a new self is going to be initiated. And of course, we can have different, it's not always going to be the same, but you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how you could find those little nuggets of crystal clean energy or awareness, should I say, being revealed there. Okay. So I want to show something to you. Here's a little bit of examples of how this actually works out. Okay. So I want to take the Aries archetype and the Capricorn archetype, and I want to show you the difference between the shadow expression of it and the higher, the more, I don't want to use the word higher expression, but let's just say something that's more graceful, like working with the alignment versus being held within its shadow. Okay. So as you can see here on my little drawing, there's Capricorn and it squares Aries. Okay. So this is for you if you have Mars in Capricorn, or if you have Saturn in the first house, right? Saturn in the first house and Mars in Capricorn. This is something that you would experience because there's a natural tension between Capricorn and Aries, natural 90-degree angle representing tension, right? How many of you with Mars in Capricorn or Saturn in the first house have at some point suffered from deep frustration? A feeling of, I want to initiate Aries always consistently. Come on, I want to do this. I want to go. And Capricorn says, yeah, but there's a limitation. Yeah, but there's a block. Here you feel limited. How many of you have experienced Mars transiting your 10th house or Saturn transiting your first house? And you've gone like, wow, I've got all this abundant energy. And every time I initiate into it, I feel like I'm being hit by a brick wall and I'm going into a brick wall. I can't get things done. I'm pushing. And it's very interesting to see the wisdom that is held within the Aries and Capricorn archetype. This tension is teaching us that when the seasons shift, which, by the way, is actually something that's directly linked with the seasons actually changing, the cardinal cross. when the seasons shift, when life shifts for you, even the subtle beginning, Aries, the sense of a promised change, Aries, I feel something stir inside of me, Cancer, a sense of hopefulness, gratitude, or openness. I mean, in this meme, it's not specific to the language itself, but whatever it is, it's welcome. And it's such a beautiful expression because when you look at Aries and Capricorn are about initiation of change in slow, progressive movements, slow, progressive actions that leads to an overall change. So when you have Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn in the first house, or Mars transiting your 10th, because these are cardinal signs, they reflect this transitory space from something that is frustrating to something that is occurring in perfect timing. Right? This is this process of initiation of change that leads to a new direction. Okay. So I want to go over to something else in my little example over here. And again, we can all relate to this. Let's say, for instance, you have Libra and Cancer archetypes synthesized together. So again, remember, we're looking at how we can help somebody and a client, or how we can help ourselves understand deeper layers of ourselves, right? So Libra and Cancer. Let's go back to our natural zodiac quickly. So Cancer talks about security, and Libra says, how do I relate? Right? How do I interact with another person? Remember that in Cancer, we have a self-identity that is subjective, that is ours. But when we get to Libra, we begin to recognize that there's other identities that are out there that we are interacting with. So in a relationship, we have our identity, the other person's identity, and then a third identity that is the definition of the relationship, yeah? And that's how we define it. So when we become emotionally interconnected, there are two dynamics that take place for us, right? And we can all relate to this at some point where we're learning this, right? Codependency. And this simply is just where our sort of insecurities or our vulnerabilities that are rooted in our childhood, the part of the ego that is still developing to feel safe within itself, is merged with the other person. And we link our security to the relationship. We define it through that way. We define ourselves through the relationship. And so this is the shadow that comes up here. So if you've got moon in Libra, moon in the 7th house, or Venus in Cancer, or Venus in the 4th house, you see how these two archetypes are working? The moon representing Cancer, and in the 7th house, or in Libra, right? There's a natural square between the moon and Libra. So this is not 100%. It's not that every single person that has the symbolism is this, but the tendency to be emotionally bonded to the other person or enmeshed with the other person is an aspect of your learning curve. So the highest expression that is, or the ultimate, or the learning experience, let me put it to you that way, is where we go from codependent to becoming not necessarily interdependent, but where we experience two realities, as you can see over here, two realities over there and over there, interacting where the independence, Aries, is not lost, i.e. two individuals interacting as individuals in a relationship where there are healthy boundaries. Okay? Let me show you this. You can actually see it, the symbolism in nature. You can actually see the cardinal cross in nature. There's the Cancer archetype. There's the Cancer archetype, right? Look at the boundaries that are created over there. This is Capricorn. It defines the two, right? And they're interrelating with each other, right? Interrelating with each other. Let me show you. Let's go to the cardinal axis here again. So that is where our security identity is. We relate it to the other person, and the relationship is defined, Capricorn, by how we relate to each other. And we're learning about each other. We're learning about ourselves, Aries, through each other. Okay. Let's take another example. our third example for today. So we have Aries and we have Cancer, which is on the other side. And as you can see over here, Aries is represented by the child. But simply, it's not about the child in terms of youthfulness, even though the Aries energy is youthful in its expression. It is more about not having enough experience and time in the new experience or in the new direction, Capricorn, that represents its insecurity, Cancer. So the baby not wanting to leave the guardian, Capricorn, is because the guardian represents something that is secure, Cancer. So separation anxiety or feelings of not being safe is the shadow aspect of Aries and Cancer, the square that takes place. So if you've got Moon in the first house, so you've got Mars in the fourth house, or you've got Mars in the first house in Cancer, as an example, Moon in Aries in the fourth, right? This tendency to feel the experience of having separation anxiety. And yet the polarity to that is that adventure can be an end in and of itself, right? Self-discovery is the secret ingredient that fuels daring, and daring is the Aries archetype. Wow, this is a new experience for me. Let's see what this adventure is about. I'm going to self-discover. I'm going to know myself in a new way because there's so much new potential, new possibility, new ways to relate, new experiences to have, new things, new people to relate to, new emotional experiences to be developed. So when we look at Aries and Mars in Cancer, or Mars, Moon in the first house, this is a soul that wants to go on this adventure, discover themselves for the new time. This is initiation of change around a new identity. This is me, right? So we all have that. When you see that in your birth chart, you see it in a client's birth chart, ask them the question: did you notice that your mom maybe felt like you couldn't get enough nurture from her, and so it led you to feeling that if you wanted to be adventurous, you needed to go out and be adventurous, and then you needed to come back to your security, as an example. That constant going out there, Pluto in the first house. In fact, my daughter has this. She has the Moon in the first house, Capricorn. And she actually has Moon in the first house, squaring the nodes, and the nodes are on the 10th and 4th, and Uranus is in Aries with the South Node in Aries in the 4th house. And she will literally express this dynamic. She'll go out, she'll experience a little bit, and she'll come back to her security, and she'll go out, and you have to nurture her that way. Have to nurture her to recognize this constant 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Okay. So let's look at the last one that I've got here for today, which is the Capricorn Libra axis. And we talked about this being a part 2 of the original talk that I had, I think it was just under a month ago. And this was a really big part of the talk, actually, with the cardinal axis, which was accessing this dynamic where social conditioning, Capricorn, how society defines itself, society's self-image, Capricorn and Cancer, and how we as human beings relate, Libra, to society's definitions of acceptability, right? And how that reflects on us. So we have this self-esteem. It's kind of interesting here because it says self-esteem, people forget. It isn't how other people see you, although this is deeply connected with the way that Capricorn operates here, because Capricorn in and of itself is society's definition. So people do see you a specific way relative to the definition. Oh, you're an astrologer. Okay, I don't think I want to talk to you because you might be a little bit too out there, or you believe in fairies and the planets and mystical things. That's why you'll have a lot of astrologers generally say that they don't do that, or that they're at a social experience and they might feel afraid. Because that Capricorn Libra axis is how will I be judged? How will I be defined in relationship to how I see myself? How I see myself, Cancer, how other people see me, Capricorn, and how that is related. How am I relating to that experience? So you see here that it's how you see yourself. And that's what makes it hard. The internalized definitions of society relative to the expectations that society places on us, Libra, that we internalize around our self-identity. And that's something that's really profound to understand, because when we can break out of those definitions, we can liberate ourselves and step into the higher expression of Saturn in Libra, or Saturn, or Venus in the 10th house, or Venus square Saturn. You'll be going through this. So your life is about surrounding yourself with those who light your path. See, you're learning here in this experience to be defined and be amongst people that define themselves in a way that you define yourself. Just as like we sit here today with the Zoom meeting, we're all relating to each other because on some level we are held in a boundary that is Capricorn, that is astrology, that is the exploration of consciousness, that's the exploration of deeper understanding of self. So we are able to relate, Libra. And so we can feel that we can explore the light together. And yet, if you showed up with this presentation at a conference that has nothing to do with astrology or atheism or something like that, you would find it really, really difficult to relate. And you would find yourself maybe even feeling insecure, Aries, Cancer, because the way that you are defining yourself and the way that other people are defining yourself clash. They're not relatable, Libra. Okay. So I hope that everybody enjoyed that sharing over there and you got something valuable out of it. I'd really like to just open the conversation to anybody that's got questions that you would like to have with me on this. So anybody that's got questions.
I do. Hi, SΥmON. It's Lauren.
Hi, Lauren.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. It's always so wonderful and inspiring to listen to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And I'm just imagining, in your opinion, the dynamics of a cardinal T cross, are they the same dynamics?
I think it was yourself or Wendy that we were talking about where we had, yes. So my answer is yes. I think that's they're always going to play out. They're always going to play out. It's just that if there are planets that are involved, like Pluto and Capricorn, Uranus and Aries, and say Jupiter and Libra, which we had just recently, the Cancer archetype is still deeply activated. It's just that those planets in those aspects will be adding an extra flavor.
Does it mean like an extra dimension of difficulty?
Yeah, I would definitely say that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I think I'm struggling a lot myself, even though I don't want to switch the subject. But I just want to learn more. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely welcome. Thanks for the question. Yeah, anybody else that's got, like I said, just open to questions. If you've got something similar into your charts, if you would like to share something that resonated with you about having Mars in Cancer or Mars in the first house or having a Mars transit to Cancer, any of those things.
Hi, SΥmON. I have Saturn in the 7th house. Could there also be a projection of that you are responsible for others, and they place that, upon you, like you're supposed to do this, blah, blah, blah. With that archetype, with the responsibility of Saturn, Capricorn, and the projection of the Libra 7th house.
I absolutely think that would be something part of your life completely. I'd go as far as to say that I would say that with Saturn in the 7th house, there is almost like a necessity or that you on the stream of awareness that asks you to define what is healthy responsibility for you and not. And so you would probably notice, and if I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that your Pluto's in the 1st house.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So
I would the Saturn.
Right. So I would say that there's definitely something that the soul is wanting with that Saturn Libra that asks for healthy boundaries and that you would have experiences that would actually almost in a sense force you to through frustration, through other people's projections, placing that onto you, and then you going, this is not my responsibility. This is not for me. This is not where my expectations lie. This is not how I want to relate. And actually solidifying a very healthy boundary in that seventh house. So absolutely, I think it was a really good question, because there's so much to explore with the different combinations that are out there. I always think as Capricorn as because I have so much of my own chart, I always think of Capricorn as from an empowerment stage or phase. I would say that it's learning how to recognize what responsibility is yours that you need to take on, and what responsibility is another person's learning experience. Like they need to go through that difficult experience in order to understand that cycle, understand that maturation in themselves, which we can prevent with Saturn in the seventh, or I can help that person out, and almost find a burden, or people placing burdens on you. I don't know if you feel that as well as part of your question, that you're feeling the burden of other people's responsibilities placed on you, because you might show up as that person that's going, oh, I seem to have my stuff in order.
Yes, definitely. It's been a lifelong lesson.
And it's a classic Saturn comment, right? A lifelong lesson.
I have a question.
Yep, fire away. I'm just trying to find out who that is talking.
Della,
there we go, Della. Hi, Della.
Yeah, my question. Hello, thank you. My question is about Uranus in the fourth.
Yep.
Scorpio, I have that.
Okay. So the first thing I would say to you is looking for repeating themes to see what is the context of why Uranus in the fourth would show up. And it just straight away, the fact that you have Uranus in the fourth house Scorpio must mean that you are definitely transforming deeply inside of yourself. The emotional security patterns that you have had in the past that were disempowering to yourself and also empowering, but let's go with the more sort of like work that requires empowerment. I would say that there's definitely needing to transform your self-identity in a very profound and deep way. Now, those are keywords, but what's the actual feeling about it? I feel like the feeling is never having consistent trust that things will remain the way that they are, because you've seen life show up for you consistently threatening your security, whether it be through people's dishonesty or their own commitment struggles, or that the structure of your home that represents your security has been threatened. Maybe mom or dad or some form of family members really had a difficult time emotionally bonding. You might actually experience a lot of emotional disconnect. I don't know. Is that the truth? Did you experience emotional disconnect from one or both of your parents, or in relationships where people were maybe emotionally abusive and you needed to kind of change that pattern?
I would say yes from one parent, and then also I've definitely had housing crisis. I had to move after a wildfire and a landslide, and
Okay,
it's
Scorpio.
just one thing after another with housing.
Right. And that can be challenging, because again, that's that Scorpio tone to it that says it's threatening. It's like it's right on my doorstep. And I would even go as far as to say that those experiences have really threatened your capacity to feel like you could place your roots deep into a place and remain there. So I think one of your experiences in this lifetime is to have to I want to say Mercury retrograde is really difficult at the moment, but I want to say a feeling of learning to stay in one place, but at the same time also probably being hyper aware that staying in one place has always resulted in having to change that home very rapidly due to circumstances outside of your control. That's where probably that trauma lies, not feeling 100% secure.
Yeah, I currently have a camper van and I'm looking at buying a boat.
Right.
So thank you.
I actually wanted to say one thing about that, by the way, which was in alignment with the cardinal energy, because again, it's about this 10th house axis. It's about the 7th house axis. With Uranus in the 4th house, Scorpio, did you, in relationships, have you felt like connecting or merging with other people would leave you in states of deep vulnerability where being vulnerable yourself meant needing to trust somebody like really, really intimately? And if it wasn't the case, because you'd be deeply sensitive to it, you would actually show up as almost as if very strong on the front, be like, well, you're not doing this consciously, of course, but I don't really want to reveal vulnerability to you because it means that there's an element of disempowerment or potential codependency, or you could actually show up being very resourceful to other people and they can be codependent on you, and trying to break those patterns. Do you experience that?
Yes, very much. I guess too. Very gullible when it comes to people and relationships.
Okay. So I think we've probably got like time for one more question.
I have another question. It's Lauren. Okay, so would this work if Ceres was in the 10th house as well, squaring? I have like 2 things going on, like with 9 and 10, with 1 and 7.
Yep.
And Black Moon Lilith is in the 4th.
Yep.
So it's kind of like, like it's like I have my ascendant's 20 Aquarius, and then it squares Mercury and Paleth in the 9th, and then I have Saturn in Capricorn squaring the nose in Aries and Libra. So
okay.
I just wanted to say, I have, like, no matter what I initiate and do, this used to work. I used to be like a magician, but lately it's just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing anymore. Does that sound crazy?
No, I think that with an Aquarius rising, there's always going to be an unpredictability around new directions for yourself, almost as if the way I feel it, at least inside of myself, is every time I try to create a pattern of security that represents surety, that Aquarius rising shows up and says, nope, got to change the pattern, buddy. Got to change the pattern, because Uranus is really the ruler of your ascendant. And then
my descendant.
Right. And with Saturn squaring the nodes, with it being squaring the Libra Aries axis, I definitely think that because of that unpredictability, it can be difficult to actually discern, or not discern, but cultivate something that's defined for you, that's solid for you, Capricorn, relative to your ego development nodal axis, right? So if I relate to people like this, it is actually about relating to others and relating to things, and knowing which side of the coin you need to be investing your Saturn into, which is the resolution node, just out of sheer curiosity, with your Saturn square, by the way.
Yeah, I know that, but you're right. It's like it's hard for me to feel the security that, and it's like, I think because Saturn squares the nodes, that's what I'm supposed to be like aiming for. But then I'm so like different than the normal consensus that, like, what I want to bring in, it's like either before the times, or it's just not a Saturn thing. Like, it is a Saturn thing, you know what I'm saying? But it's, I don't know.
Well, here's the intuitive thing that comes to me, judging from the other planets that you've got in Sag, is that it's about the channel of structuring. So it's this capacity to have very profound insights, and then, in a sense, find a way to ground that insight into something that's tangible, so that it awakens people not awakens people progressively, but has illuminating effect. So it's like, with the last time that I did this Zoom meeting, I had a very, very deep connection to what I wanted to talk about. But I also noticed inside of myself that I wasn't able to fully ground it. So to me, it felt like I felt like I failed completely. And it was the truth. I really did. I felt like I didn't capture the essence of what I was connecting to, because I know that what I was connecting to was really profound, but so it's ahead of its time, and it needs more time. Saturn, it needs more time to mature, so that when it does actually become something that's useful and valuable for whoever it is that you might be wanting to share the insight with, it's actually digestible. And it's like playing the part of Saturn and Uranus in a way that's respecting their energies, right? So Saturn requires us to be more, again, just it requires time, it requires more thought, it requires more reflection, Capricorn. And Uranus says to you, here's the quick insight, but where's the bridge? Where's the bridge between physical and metaphysical? And I suppose that's one of the reasons why your work on Chiron is so important to you, because it does actually correlate to how you actually ground that electrical energy into something that's more material for people to digest, that allows their own awakening experience to happen. And just a last thing over there, the flood of intuition came through. I noticed that you talked about a Sagittarius Mercury thing. And what's interesting is that the left and the right hemisphere of the brain need to be in balance in order for a Uranian impulse to come through, because it's the abstract concept that is then expressed in logical format, Mercury, that allows for a holistic expression of insights to be digestible by people. I hope that wasn't too mouthful, but so it's an interesting thing there, where I think there is something about, how do I take a profound insight and make it digestible? Channel of structuring. How do I structure this? What type of imagery do I use? I mean, I need it particularly with my work. So, yeah.
Your work is great. Oh gosh, thanks. And I wasn't laughing at you. I was just laughing because I feel.
Yeah, no.
And yeah, so it's just like, and I think it's more about structuring myself again.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. Just one question would be enough. Thank you. So, thank you so much, SΥmონ.
Thanks very much, Linda.
Fantastic. You really, really nailed it. It really got through to me. So, thank you so much. I think it's going to help lots of people. So, looking forward to seeing you next time. Can't wait for the next one. Would you all please thank SΥmონ Vorster, everyone?
Thank you, SΥmон.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Awesome, SΥmон. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful week. Bye.